Welcome to the Studio Chatter podcast, everybody. I'm Craig Reeves, and today I have a guest. He is a great producer and composer. He is named Toru. How are you, Toru?
I'm doing really well, man. Thank you for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah, definitely. So I love your music, and I was introduced to your music by my friend Aunt Shay, who is a mutual friend of ours, and he's a big fan of your stuff. And he introduced me to your stuff, and I have fallen in love with it. I basically listened to all of it as soon as he introduced me to your music.
Wow, man. Thank you. That's really, really flattering. And yeah, shouts to Anshay. He's one of the just like nicest, most positive people that I think I've met in these communities, over the course of the past couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And funny because I had talked to him last week about on this very show about the fact that had it not been for this pandemic, we wouldn't have all gotten to know each other. We wouldn't have all come to know each other,
Yeah, man. I mean, I do think it's, not to discount the pain and the struggle that a lot of people have gone through during this time and still do. But I do think a silver lining for us in this time has been, like I've definitely met a lot of producers and connected with people and learned a ton of things about music that it's hard to imagine of having happened, without all the time at home in front of the computer.
Absolutely. So one of the things about your music that I really enjoy is the fact that you can't really put your finger on what kind of genre it is, because most people would say, oh, it's lo-fi, but there's a lot of like jazz and blues and kind of funk influence in your music. Would you say that lo-fi is a bit reductive for what you do?
Man, that's such an interesting question. And I think in general, I feel like I hear and see this being discussed, like everybody, lo-fi it's a sensitive term. And I think in general, labels can be for artists, because I feel like we're not trying to necessarily make something that fits in a box. But I think, I remember I read this interview with, I'm a big fan of Kiefer, and it was an interview on Bandcamp like a few years back. And he was like, as an artist, what I like to do is make music, and my job is to make music and release it. And that's where the responsibility stops. And I really like that, because then I think you kind of free yourself from it a little bit. And it's up to the audience to kind of decide how they want to classify it and talk about it. I do think words in general are tough, like how do you describe something that's indescribable? Music is a pretty tough thing to put into words. And so really any label is going to reduce it to some degree. But I do think generally it's just a tool to try to help a friend or somebody understand your music suggestion, so I think it also has a place to be really useful.
Yeah, and it's also good to end up on a playlist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
like on a spot. Yeah, like it's good to end up on a Spotify playlist. You can say, "Oh, this is lo-fi," and then people will put it in a playlist. So I guess that's kind of the deal there. You've been linked up with Goji Records. How did you get linked up with them?
Yeah, man, that's a really funny question, because it really just sort of happened by accident, I guess. I've really just been making beats and putting them on Instagram for a while now. And I think, shout out to Paul and Goji Records. That guy he just found me on Instagram one day, and he was just like, hey man, like I like what you're doing, like, keep it up. Maybe one day we'll work on something. And I think this was even before he had started Goji. And then, that was that. And then months later, maybe even closer to a year later, he reached out again, and he was like, hey, like I have this project where I'm going to try to start helping release music with people. If you're interested, send me something. And, I sent him something, and it kind of just went from there. So I do think it's one of those things where it really just helps sometimes it doesn't feel like anybody's watching. I think that's what's tough about social media. But I think it's nice to remember and to experience that there are people out there looking for music, and so just continuing to make it and share it makes you discoverable.
Absolutely. And the records you released, the last record that I saw you come out with was Coil, which is your best performing record to date.
Big shouts to Paul and his people over there. I mean, they really, they definitely helped me out. I mean, there's no way that I could do all of this on my own.
What do you think is the advantage of releasing your music through a label versus doing it on your own? Because you did release stuff on your own, and then you released a record through a label. What do you think is the advantages and disadvantages, or if there are any at all, to releasing your music through a label versus releasing it independently?
Yeah. I like this question because, you know, my general belief is this, that we can do more together than we can individually or alone. And so I think that is the overall advantage of working with people on anything in general. I think what becomes more important to know is, you know, what it is that you like to spend your time doing and what you're really good at, because then as opportunities present themselves, as they inevitably will, you're better able to assess through that lens of like, is this a good fit? You know, can those people help me? And can I help those people in exchange? You know, can we have, you know, a win-win if we work together? And I think when Goji reached out, it was because they felt I had something to offer them. And fortunately, I feel like they're helping me with exactly the things that I know less about and that I also have less interest in. I'd like to spend more time creating music and creating videos, learning how to become a better producer. And I think this particular arrangement in this case really helped me do that. And I think will help them have some music to release.
Absolutely. So you plan on continuing to release music through them, correct?
So right now I can think I have another track that should be coming out with them later this year. And so, yeah, I think, again, like they've been really, really great. And I don't see any reason at this point to not continue what's working for us, you know?
Nice. Yeah. So that kind of, I guess, dovetails into the next question because your stuff is very intricate. There's a lot of live sounding instruments. I don't know if you're playing them all, but it definitely has a live sound to it. How long does it take on average for you to put a track together?
Man, that's an interesting question because I really don't think about, I don't know, because I guess the first thing is no song is created equal. There are some that take more time and some that take less for a number of reasons. The other part of that is generally, I don't really think about how long it takes me to do them. And I don't keep track of how long it takes me to do them typically, but I do approach the work in a really structured way. So I typically work on something for an hour and a half at a time in like 2 45-minute blocks with like a break in between them, which I know maybe sounds strange. And so when I get to the end of that hour and a half block, wherever I am, I just close it. And usually at the end of that time, I have something, you know, and it's something usually that I'll share. And if it's something that I really like, I'll revisit it and work on it in the same fashion, like for an hour and a half at a time in those blocks until it kind of feels like it's finished, you know? And that's typically how it goes. And, you know, I appreciate it. I feel like, you know, that's a compliment. It's not lost on me. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing is, because I listen to your music and there's a lot of different instruments. I hear bass, I hear guitar. What instruments do you play? Like, what all instruments do you play?
Yeah, so my entry point into music is the guitar. I started playing guitar in high school. And that was basically it. When I started producing, I really was like, piano seems to make sense. Because of like all the opportunities that exist through MIDI, right? It's like if you can play the keyboard, you have access to a lot of instruments and expression that you otherwise don't. So when I started making beats, I was like, all right, I'm going to try to start learning the piano and see where this goes. So I've just like kind of just over the past few years, just been trying to learn the basics. And so I can get around, you know, enough to make what I've been making. And then I think the bass just is a byproduct of being able to play the guitar, right? Like I've been playing guitar for a little while. And so the bass is very, very similar in a lot of ways. And I don't play the bass to the same extent I play the guitar. But so, yeah, in terms of bass, guitar, keys, and obviously I guess that kind of translates to the synthesizers. And in the background, I've been trying to work on some chops on trying to learn how to play the drums a little bit. So those are the things that I'm working on learning these days.
And you use Ableton, right?
Yes, very loyal Ableton user at this point.
Yeah, I use Ableton as well. And funny enough, it was Aunt Shay and Magda Helena who had gotten me over to Ableton. They helped me to learn Ableton and stuff like that. I don't use Ableton alone. I do use Cakewalk as well. So I use Cakewalk and Ableton interchangeably at this point. It just depends on what I'm doing or what kind of music I'm making.
Cool.
For kind of like pop music, I tend to use Ableton a little bit more. For R&B, I typically use Cakewalk a little bit more. So it just kind of depends on what I'm doing. But yeah, I mean, Ableton is a great DAW. Do you use version 11 or version 10?
Yeah, I am on 11, and yeah, I like it. I mean, again, I've been on Ableton since I learned on 9. So I've been, and it's more or less the same. There's been some cool features. I think what I really like is the keyboard shortcuts are getting better and better, which I really, really like. And it's nice to see them evolve some of the plugins and stuff too.
Do you plan on working with artists, like having artists feature on some of your music? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I have. And I guess it's, I really would like to. I have some stuff, that's sort of brewing in the background that I hope sort of materializes. And I would love to. I definitely welcome the opportunity to work with people. I think sort of what I was saying before is, I think it comes down to like timing and fit, like feeling like you come across another artist or set of artists that are in a place where you feel like you can help one another and where you feel like your styles work and your schedules work and all that kind of stuff. So I think I really do welcome it. And I try not to be, at times I feel like I can be impatient, but generally I try not to force anything and trust that, things kind of work in their own time.
Yeah, that's very good advice to follow. And too many people don't.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're all guilty of it at some point. We all, progress is exciting and we like to experience it. And sometimes, it doesn't come when we feel like when it should or when we like it to.
Yeah. You're based in Portland now, right?
I actually now live in Mexico City.
Okay, so why are you based in Mexico City? Because you were based in Portland at one point, right? Or am I getting that wrong?
So no, you're right. I was living in San Francisco, and you may have heard the pandemic hit, and it offered this opportunity to change. And so I just kind of ran with that. And so I moved from San Francisco to Portland, where I met a girl who was offered a job in Mexico City. And so we moved here, and pretty soon after that, realized that we needed to learn Spanish yesterday. And really that's where a lot of my time spending learning music production and instruments has helped me tremendously, because it's like everything that's helped me progress in music, what I've learned is if you work consistently day by day, progress is inevitable. And so I've really applied that to learning Spanish. And the spoiler alert is I'm far from fluent in Spanish, but I'm way ahead of where I was when I arrived. And it really is just a result of working on it and chipping away consistently day after day.
So you ended up moving to Mexico City because your girlfriend ended up moving to Mexico City because she was offered a job there.
Right.
That's really, really romantic. I like that. That's a very romantic story of moving to Mexico City and being willing to move to another country.
Right on.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place, man. If you ever get the chance, yeah, I highly recommend a visit.
You know what's funny? I have not been to Mexico. I've been to Canada, but I've never been to Mexico.
Plus, you're in Atlanta too, right? It's not too far.
And I used to live in Texas.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of no excuse. Right. So going kind of back to the Ableton, or I guess music production side of it.
Sure.
What would you say are some of your go-to synths?
Wow. So ever since I bought this Prophet, I have really been trying to learn it over time. And so I'm using the Prophet a lot these days, which is, not necessarily a software synth by any means, but is kind of the synth that I'm using a lot of the time. And then I will say that probably like a lot of producers out there, I have more plugins than I really need at any one moment. But I think what's nice about that is that I find myself kind of drift from one to the other over time. And so my projects will sort of change in what's being used in them all the time, you know? So I think the one go-to that has been there like ever since I got it has been Keyscape. I use Keyscape on like pretty much like if you hear piano or keyboards of any kind, like it's going to be Keyscape. I love the classical piano sound. I love their upright. Some of the Rhodes and the Wurlitzers just sound so good. And I also really like Vital. It's, you know, like the free wavetable sort of serum kind of synth. And really, really like that. And so I would say those are some of like the VSTs that I use a lot. And in terms of like the plugins, I really, really like saturation plugins. So Ableton Saturator is definitely a go-to. Softtube makes a free saturation knob that you can download. That's really, really nice. It's literally just, it's kind of like a one knob plugin, but it's really, really cool what you can get out of that. And I really just like bass, like reverb, delay, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah. Keyscape is awesome. I love Keyscape. Yeah. I use it. Yeah, I use it all the time. In fact, I use it in pretty much all the productions that I've made in recent memory. And it's funny because I don't even remember where. I think I might have heard of Keyscape from maybe Vaughn Oliver. Like I used to watch his Twitch stream and he used Keyscape quite often, but there's a lot of people who use Keyscape. And yeah, it's great. Like I love the electric pianos, the digital pianos that are in there. Like I use those all the time, and people hear them in my music a lot. Like the E pianos, not the Rhodes, but like the E pianos, like the electric pianos, like the digital Rhodes and the crystal Rhodes and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so I
Yamaha
use those.
Those are really, really dope.
Yeah, I use the Yamaha keyboard. Yeah, I use those too. Yeah. Do you use Omnisphere? Like, are you familiar with that?
I don't use it. I really, really want it. It's just, you know, it's pricey. And as I was saying, I just have all this other stuff. I really would like to have it because I see people use it and it sort of looks like the only thing that you need, you know, if you have it. So maybe one day, but as of yet, no.
Yeah, Bad Snacks she's a heavy Omnisphere user. And it's funny because I don't think she started using Omnisphere until this year, but ever since, I think it was last year she started using Omnisphere. And ever since she started using it, it's basically taken up like 2/3 of her productions. Wow. I mean, there's like a lot of synths that she doesn't even use anymore because she uses Omnisphere. Wow. And I think now like they sponsor her and stuff like that because she does videos for them and stuff. So yeah, she has become a full-on Omnisphere adherent.
Yeah, that's what's up, man. I mean, she makes great beats no matter what she uses. So it doesn't surprise me that she's making killer stuff with Omnisphere.
Yeah. So I want to kind of go back a little bit to the whole thing with labels. So if I were a producer who was trying to find a label, let's say if I made the kind of music that you make, what advice would you give to me if I wanted to have my music released through a label? What steps would you advise me to go through?
That's an interesting question, man. It's a tough question. And I kind of think what's important is, and the way that it happened for me is that I didn't necessarily really set out to do that. I think I was a little bit more heads down and focused on, okay, like how do I get better? How do I just spend time making beats? And I wasn't even necessarily trying to make a certain number of beats or even make a certain style. I was just making stuff and putting it out there. And that led to somebody finding me. And I think that's what I would tell anybody who wants to make music is to spend time making music. I think the more time that you spend making it, the better it's going to get. And the more clearly you're going to see what's important to you And the more clearly you're going to understand the types of people you're going to work well with. And I think it's really simple and difficult at the same time, because it is as simple as like just find a way to be consistent and work hard with intention. And also at the same time, it's difficult because it's be patient and accepting that maybe we don't have a lot of control over recognition sometimes, and I think anybody who makes beats, as a one person show is maybe somebody who on the spectrum of control is a little bit higher. They like the feeling of being able to control a process and a project. And so I think letting go of that and letting your work and letting yourself kind of just like control the quality of your work and let the rest take care of itself is sometimes hard to accept. And I know that it's something that I still struggle with at times.
Yeah, you and me both. And particularly with your genre, which I guess we could call it a genre, is people will listen to your music really in the background. I mean, it's kind of like there will be this big compilation of, quote, lo-fi music, and people aren't really going to care who the artist is, right? It's like they'll go to the lo-fi girl playlist or the lo-fi girl YouTube channel. Is that what it's still called?
Yeah.
I haven't been to it in a while.
Yeah.
But they're not going to care who the artist is. They're not going to care who the producer is. So do you sometimes feel like your music needs to stand out from the rest of all the stuff? Because I mean, it's really not hard to find, quote, lo-fi. I don't even know if I would even say your music is just like lo-fi, but like, I mean, do you think that it's sometimes difficult to stand out from all the other lo-fi stuff that's out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think given the number of people that make any kind of music or produce any kind of music through Ableton that's electronic and kind of made in bedrooms, I think it's tough to stand out in general. I think because there are just so many people doing this. And I think, I don't know if I'm really making the music for recognition. I mean, I think it's nice to be appreciated. I do feel good when somebody hears my song and tells me they like it, when a random person sends me a DM and says, hey, like, I found your music, I really love it, like, keep going. Like, those kinds of small things are really encouraging. And it's nice to know that while there is a lot of passive listening going on in the world, that there are also people, when they come across music that you like, that they notice who made it, and that they'll even go as far as to send them a message or write a comment. These small gestures online are pretty great. So
do you get DMs like that?
Yeah, I have, and it's like, it is a pretty humbling thing, because like you said, right, I'm just this person making music in their place. And it's not something, like you said, you exist in a vast sea of music. So it's not like you feel like you're somebody who is recognizable in any way. And so when you do receive praise and recognition in moments like that, it is really humbling. And I'm really grateful that I've even had those small things happen to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you did have me reach out to you and want to do an interview with you. So, I mean, I guess there's that as well.
Yeah, man. And again, I'm very grateful and stoked to be here with you. Thanks for making the time and having me.
Absolutely. So what major artists, like if you could just think of like a major artist, I'm talking about like on the Billboard Hot 100, if you could pick one major artist to feature on a track of yours, who would that be?
Yeah, I don't know who's on the Billboard Hot 100. I don't know. I'm really, really poor at keeping up with things like that. I would say when I think about like kind of the like more like mainstream artists, I think Anderson .Paak is somebody that I really, really love. I think his music.
And okay, Anderson .Paak would be a major artist for sure.
Yeah, and
well, how about I throw some names at you and then you can tell me how you'd feel about it? Because I'm looking at the Billboard Hot 100 right now. So Harry Styles is number one right now.
Well, I don't even know who that is, man. I don't. To be honest,
Harry Styles was, I believe, part of One Direction.
Okay. Oh, okay. That sounds familiar.
I think so. Not unless I'm getting him mixed up with somebody else. So that shows y'all how much I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was. I'm looking at it now. Yeah, Harry Styles was a member of One Direction.
Got you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I've never met him, but hey, maybe we meet for coffee, throw out some ideas. Maybe something clicks.
All right. What about Jack Harlow?
Oh, wow. So, you know, I know Jack Harlow because when I was visiting a friend of mine back home a couple of years ago, he would just not stop playing Jack Harlow. So I would, you know, I've never really made beats for rappers, and I'm really curious. Like, people have told me, and I don't think they meant it. It was sort of like, I don't think they meant it as an insult or anything, but they were just like, they said like, nobody could ever sing or rap on your music. And I was like,
no, I disagree.
So, yeah, I mean, and, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's an opinion thing, I guess. Right. But yeah, I do. But so I do get curious, like if I were given a situation or a rapper approached me like that, and I felt like it was a fit, like, how would that go? Because I've never tried to do something like catered to a vocalist, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Doja Cat.
Oh, wow. So that song, Say So, she does that song, right?
Yeah.
That song, man, I really like, man, that the production, it's so catchy. Like, that's one of those, like, I heard that and I was like, this is a hit. Like, this is, you know, it makes sense to me that this is on the radio. So 100%, like, I would love to do a song like that of any kind. That'd be cool.
She's definitely one of those artists who you wonder how she got so good because she's so young. That's the thing. And so it's like, she just kind of came out of nowhere and came up with that record, and like Say So's great. And then her album, the whole album that song is on is great. And then Planet Her as her second album, and it's great too. It's like, I haven't heard anything bad come from Doja Cat.
Yeah, that's what's up, man. That's the only song that I've heard from her. So, but yeah, I really thought it was a really good pop track, man.
Yeah, definitely. So we ask this question every podcast, and we're going to ask it to you. How did you get started in music?
How did I get started?
How did Toru go from a little kid playing video games after school to the great producer we see today?
Oh, wow, man. Thank you. You're very kind. But I think for me, like, guitar was my entry point into music. You know, I started in high school. And that was, you know, and it's funny because I have this memory before I started playing guitar. I think I was like 13 or 14. And I, like, for some reason said to my dad, like, I don't get music. Like, what's the big deal? And, you know, he just looked at me and said, you know, one day you will. And what's funny about this for me is that I'm saying this as somebody who, like, spent years working in record stores and, like, going to shows and seeing bands. And, you know, our house was filled with records and CDs and tapes and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, a couple of years later, I started playing the guitar and I become, you know, obsessed with music, you know, so that's really where it started for me. And I think because my dad was such an avid fan, he had such a crazy CD collection that I had so much, and he was always playing music around me, always. Like, anytime we were in the car, in the house, there's always something playing. And I think probably because he spent so much time in a record store when he was younger, the breadth of the catalog was just really all over the place. And so I think I got exposed to a lot of different music while also really exploring the music that's pretty common when you start playing guitar as a teenager. You know, I really became obsessed with Hendrix, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, you know, a lot of those things that you would expect somebody to kind of fall into. And then at the same time, his brother, my uncle, is a jazz pianist. He writes songs. And so I really got exposed to a lot of jazz through him when I was in high school and college. So every time I'd come home from college, he would just give me like a stack of jazz CDs. And so that's really how I got into stuff like John Scofield or Mulgrew Miller. And so I really got exposed to a lot of stuff because I came up around a couple people who are just really deep appreciators of music.
Wow. So what got you into like producing your own?
Yeah, I remember like 10 years ago, I was like, I'm going to learn how to make beats. And I bought a machine, right? I remember like I had it ordered to the office I was working in and I opened it up and I was Like, yeah, I'm going to learn how to make beats. I made like 6 beats and then it just collected dust, and I never touched it again. And then years later, I was like, my friend helped me get a cracked version of Ableton, and I messed with that for a couple months. I recorded some songs with a friend and put it down again. And then for whatever reason, a few years ago, did you ever listen to Soul Circle Radio? So I was like a religious follower of this radio show, and it still exists, but it just doesn't happen like weekly anymore. But shout out to DJ Mizzo. Like, I used to listen to this show every week at my desk, with my headphones in. And it's basically this guy in LA, and he just curates a really dope playlist. And at the end of it, he usually has a guest who performs like a short set, 15, 20 minutes, and then does another interview for another 15, 20 minutes, depending. And listening to those shows and then those interviews and performances of these people, I remember just like listening and being like, it just started, that show really made me feel like the distance between me and those people was a lot smaller. I was like, the difference is these people make music and I don't. And it just really was like, it's that simple. I just need to start making music. And when I came to that realization for myself, I just started making music and didn't look back. It was the kind of thing where I was waking up at 6 a.m. to make beats and learn Ableton before work, go to work, sit at my desk during lunch, watch Ableton tutorials, come home from work on beats, go to bed, and just do it again. And that's really how I got my legs under me, because as as somebody who came from Ableton, especially from another DAW, that there's a steep learning curve in Ableton, in my opinion. Like, coming in, there's a high barrier to entry. Once you get your way around it, it becomes a little easier, but it's a pretty specific thing to learn,
Well, that is really an amazing story. So with you, I mean, it was just kind of like you started with guitar, you developed a love for music through your family and stuff like that. That's awesome. I love that. How old are you?
I'm 35.
35?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you're not much younger than I am. I'm 38. So
yeah, man. I mean, sometimes being in these scenes, that we feel like the grandpas in this thing,
Oh my God. I can't even tell you. I mean, I often feel like I am so old when I'm around people who are like 18, 19 years old, who are absolutely killing it. And it's funny because I always talk about this, that the people today are making better music at 19 than I did when I was 29. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I hear you. Like, I can definitely relate to that feeling, and I think for me, I try to keep in mind that, we're not competing, that we're all just trying to make our own thing. But yeah, I mean, it's really a trip when you see some of these people and what they're able to do at such a young age.
Yeah. It's like, I listened to my stuff when I was 19. It is unbearable. But then you have these people out here like who are making this absolutely complete sounding, professional sounding music at like 23, 24 years old. Like, my friend Magda Helena, who was on this show, I mean, she is an incredible producer. Like, her music's incredible, and she's 24. And I look back at the stuff that I was making when I was 24. This was back like, what, 2008, 2007 maybe, and it is nowhere near the level of professionalism and polish that I'm hearing from people today. I mean, I guess a lot of it just has to do with the fact that, when I was coming up in production, it was that the access to information and feedback and learning, it just wasn't what it is today. I mean, people have a lot more access to information today, and the training is different today than it was when I was coming up. And so that's, I think, the reason why people are so much better at a younger age. There wasn't an icon collective, when I was coming up, I mean, there was not. So
yeah, man, I hear you. I mean, there was, but there were also record stores when you were coming up, I mean, it's just, things change a little bit. And I do think it is, I mean, YouTube has changed the game. I mean, I have thought, wow, it would have been really cool if YouTube was around when I was trying to learn the guitar as a kid, to be able to watch people play these things and to see a lot of the stuff in front of you. is a lot different, you know? It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then the access to things that people have access to now, like the stuff that was like the high quality sounds and stuff, a lot of people didn't have access to, you know? I can only imagine
now. Yeah. Like, you know, with your phone now, you can record anything, you know, like you watch a guy like Andrew Wong, you know, and he records like any sound that he wants and can build an entire song through it, you know? It's incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. So are you looking to do live? Are you looking to perform live and do shows and stuff? What is your experience in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time. I played in a band when I was in college, and that's really the last time where I was like regularly like gigging at all. But I do think that there is a part of me, you know, like I remember, are you familiar with FKJ at all?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so FKJ, I mean, he's really come a long way over the past, you know, I guess like 7-8 years since I discovered him. But when I first discovered him, I remember I found this video of him on YouTube, and he's from France, and he was playing at what looks like a small lounge, and it's like it looks like it's even like a rehearsal or like the pre-party or something. It's like people are sort of just standing around in this room, and he's just sitting there with his computer, his APC 40. A guitar and a bass, you know, and a keyboard. And he just lays down like a one-man looping set, you know, and I was like, wow. And, you know, and it's really just grown from there over time. He's really learned to incorporate a bunch of things. But I think and I discovered him before I had started making beats. And so I think that image of performance has kind of stuck with me. And I really like the idea of being able to do it. And I think has been part of the motivation to learn some other instruments. I don't know, but I do think that is like sort of that's sort of the pipe dream, I guess, is to be able to produce some sort of live show that's part live looping, part pre-recorded stuff, and part improvisation. I really have always been drawn to the improvisational part of music and live music.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what do you got lined up for the future? What is the plan for the remainder of the year? Like, do you have any future projects that are lined up or what?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking, man. I mean, I think the main thing that I'm working on like on a weekly basis right now is I sort of told myself I'm going to try to put out 2 YouTube videos for a week for as long as I can. So right now I'm in like the 14th or 15th week of that. And so I'm trying to keep that going. So that's one thing. The second is I'm working on trying to get like a little bit of, I guess it's sort of educational in nature. It's like basically just trying to share my process and the way that I do things a little bit, from producing, arranging, mixing, and even mastering. So I have this video that I'm working on right now, and I hope to kind of just give part of that away. And the other thing is I'm going to, you know, be releasing more music. So I have the thing with Goji that we talked about earlier, some other stuff that I'm really excited about, but I don't think I can talk about just yet. And hopefully, you know, fingers crossed, everything kind of falls into place. I'm also in the process of compiling. I want to give away a list of resources. I think, like, to your point about the accessibility of content, there is so much stuff available to learn through. And so I think what I'm trying to do is create here the lists of like my favorite and that I found to be the most helpful over time. And I just want to kind of give that list away as well to people who are trying to learn. I consume a lot of podcasts as well. So cataloging like all kinds of stuff that have helped me, because maybe they're not even directly related to music, but they might be helpful in figuring out ways and strategies to work through the stuff that you're working on. So, you know, this is all the kind of stuff that I'm trying to give away through the mailing list that I have through my website.
That's awesome. So you're kind of giving back.
Yeah, man, I think, because really, when I think about everything that I've learned, it is really a function of people that have helped me. And, you know, Stolen Drums especially has been somebody who's influenced me a lot recently. He is somebody that I think really serves the community. And I think that's really, you know, I really do think in a lot of ways that anybody who makes music makes it because they want to create for themselves and for other people. Mm-hmm. The crazy feelings that they get from hearing the music that inspired them to make it in the first place, you know? And so,
oh yeah.
So I think, you know, that's part of why I make music. And I think I want to, and I realize that like I've accumulated all this stuff and that it is sometimes it took time to find the good stuff, you know, because there is so much stuff that you watch and you don't know if it's going to be good or not, if it's going to be helpful or not. And so I want to kind of compile that and give it away to people just as a way to help them maybe find things with a little bit less search time, because, you know, like it is, you come home from work and maybe you don't have a ton of time. So if you can just sit down and know what you're going to watch and get to it, I think stuff like that can help you save a little bit of time here and there and hopefully teach you things that are going to help you get to that next spot you want to get to.
That is amazing. Well, Toru, this has been great. Thank you for coming on my show. I really appreciate it. And you guys who are listening to this on YouTube, there will be a link to Toru's newest record, Coil. We're going to have a link to it in the description. Toru, thank you for coming on this show, my friend.
Hey, Craig, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.